The worst feature of every WoW expansion. Let's take a look at this, guys, here. Let's see what this is.
Over many years, Blizzard has introduced so many different systems, patches, updates, and changes to the world of Warcraft.
Hi, Brick.
Some of them have become defining features of the game that have been carried forward
Dailies.
and well remembered by so many of us. Others are things that have been left behind and that we'll probably sooner forget. But what were the best features and what were the worst? Today I'm going to be covering
I don't think I have ever heard a sound effect like that in a Willy video. What?
I feel was the worst feature of each of World of Warcraft's expansions so far. And yes, this will be fully in my own opinion, so I'm expecting people to agree or maybe disagree on some points. But with all that said, there's 10 expansions to get through and a lot of years of content. For me, these have to be the worst features in each World of Warcraft expansion.
Okay, for vanilla, what is he gonna be the worst one? I think he's gonna say attunements. But maybe that's for TBC. We'll see. We'll see. For vanilla, I would say attunements. Rank 14? Oh, it could be the ranking as well. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's gonna be ranking. Yeah, I think so.
First, a quick word from
before each of the new we'll guess, guys. We'll do a little guess.
They sponsor Boot.dev. Boot.dev is a platform dedicated to teaching back-end web development
or 40-man rating,
to finish in the Python and Go programming languages. Python. It keeps things fresh and interesting by treating this a learning experience like an RPG, where you're in charge of the pace at which the action happens.
Is the camera really small, or am I tripping? Okay, so yeah, I changed a little bit about the camera. I made it a lot wider. But that also means you see less of like my big face, right? So I don't know. I don't personally mind it like this, but maybe we could change it if y'all, you know. I'm a little bit smaller, I guess, these days. You know.
It has achievements, leaderboards, daily goals.
I think it looks pretty nice personally, but.
And much more. And above all, Boot.dev wants to get you hands-on writing and understanding your own code, as it's such an effective way to learn the content. There is plenty of help available for your learning journey too. For example, Boot has an AI tool to help you understand what you are learning, rather than just handing you the answers if you do get stuck. And Boot.dev believe that getting a solid understanding of the fundamentals and taking your time is key in this field of work. And if eventually it proves to be something for you, it can be a well-paid field and often has remote working opportunities too. So why not check them out? You can click the link in the description box and use my code WILLE to get 25% off your first payment for Boot.dev.
I think about buying this up to Boot.dev. The thing about it is that it's like a way of, I guess this term like gamifying has become popular lately, right? Because pirate software, I suppose, but it's actually like a good way of learning these days, because like treating stuff like a little reward system and stuff is a really good way of learning.
That's 25% your first month or your first year, depending on the subscription that you choose.
It's kind of cool.
Many thanks to Boot.dev for the continued support on the channel. Let's get on back to WoW.
Okay.
Starting from the start, of course, in vanilla. It's difficult to look back to vanilla now, having played it back in the day in 04 and 5, and then its re-release in Classic in 2019. And those two things are very, very different experiences. The worst feature of vanilla originally was the fact that I still had to go to school and couldn't play the game all day. But really, how can I criticize a time so steeped in nostalgia? On its re-release in 2019 though, I do think Classic started to show that there were some decisions in the game that didn't quite hold up as well these days. So for the worst feature of vanilla, I'm going to go on the artificial restrictions that are placed on the game by the developers. And what I mean by this are just numbers which can't go above certain points. Take for example the debuff cap in vanilla. Originally you could only have 8 debuffs on a target at one time. There was
that I will agree, actually. That is, yes, that was kind of annoying. Well, you cannot use your abilities because we will only have 8 debuff slots on the target. Yeah, that is kind of shitty.
Of course 40-man raiding, and one player could do half of those debuffs pretty easily. And I can only imagine back in the day it would have been an absolute mess of just people overriding each other's debuffs. Right? In patch 1.7 around when...
But yeah, I do agree, Kustanin. A lot of those things back in the day were not really because they wanted to design it like that. It was because they were very limited by the amount of like you know, a lot of things back then, like how you could design games. It was a lot of hardware, there was issues. But nowadays, obviously, since they remade it, they changed those things, right?
When ZG was released, they raised this debuff cap from 8 to 16. This did make things a bit more flexible, but really it was still the case that you were only allowed to apply debuffs which were benefiting the whole raid, such as Curse of Recklessness, Thunder Armor, and so on. Serpent Sting? Nope. Moonfire? Nope. Corruption as a warlock? Maybe if you're lucky. In future expansions, they'd raise the debuff cap to where basically it wouldn't apply anymore, but I don't think it was the best feature in vanilla. Along the lines of restrictions, there was also a buff cap where you could only have 32 buffs at one time.
Oh my god. Why did I just say it like that? Getting your like world buff knocked off because, you know, you get like a I don't know, like a slice and dice or something, freaking sucked, man. I remember that, like you lost the world buff because you gained like a little extra buff.
Sounds pretty excessive, but if you're fully buffed up using all the world buffs and consumables, you can reasonably hit that number whilst you're in a raid. And for example, if you were playing a restoration druid and you wanted to use rejuvenation on a warrior, you would actively be griefing them by giving them the possibility of removing more important buffs. That was the state of some classes in vanilla. Again, a lot of buffs were consolidated and world buffs were removed in future expansions, so that wasn't a problem anymore. And the final restriction that's definitely worth a mention for vanilla has to be spell batching. On vanilla's re-release in 2019, Blizzard recreated this system where effectively spell inputs had up to a forced half a second delay.
I think spell batching is a really cool part of vanilla, but it shouldn't be as big of a window as they remade it with, right? Because again, it was a technical limitation that was in the game back then, but I think it's a very integral part of what PvP is in vanilla, but it shouldn't be as big as they remade it with.
Did try to emulate how things were back in the day, but it just ended up being really scuffed. This spell batching window essentially meant that spells were dealt with in a group every half a second rather than being resolved as soon as possible. So what this meant is sometimes, for example, you could land a heal on a tank, you spend your mana, but the batching window hasn't occurred yet, so you lose all your mana and the tank dies anyway. I think it was an interesting idea to try it again. It just didn't work. The Burning Crusade. On we ventured through the dark portal into...
What is he gonna say? Is it gonna be attunements? Is it gonna be group-wide buffs? What is it gonna be for TBC? I wonder. Attunements were a pain, but I don't think they were as bad as people make them up to be. Maybe flying mounts? It could be flying mounts, because flying mounts is like a great thing, but it's also a horrible thing. Shamans, class disparity? Maybe. Let's see what he says.
To a mysterious alien world. This was back in the good old days of midnight releases and queuing outside your local game store to pick up a copy. Things were very different back then. And they were different in the game as well. One of the most defining features of the Burning Crusade has to have been attunements. Now I've gone on record a bunch of times and said, actually, I think attunements are pretty good. And I'll stand by that. They are pretty good. The first time, when you're going through them with your guild, you're seeing all the content through, you're getting a...
I don't mind them too much because I don't play 16 characters. But some people do that, you know, and then that sucks.
A first look at the dungeons. It's a pretty satisfying ladder to have to climb. The problem comes along when you want to play an alt, or maybe even a character after that, because you need to go through this entire attunement process on each one. And the attunement process in TBC was long. The real simple way of explaining it is to get onto each new raid tier, you had to have completed the raid tier before that. And in TBC, people typically weren't going back to old raids as much as they were in vanilla, so when new people came along and tried to join your guild, it was often the case that you had to rerun them through this old content again and again to try and get them up to speed, only for inevitably the roster boss to hit, people quit, you need new recruits, and you just got this revolving door of trying to get people up this ladder to the point where they can raid where your guild's currently at. In time, Blizzard would dial these attunement requirements back a lot, and
I think a good way of doing this, is like you do the attunements on your main character, and then you open them up for your alts, right? So you can skip them on your alts if that's the case.
Future expansions, they basically did away with this system entirely. So as interesting as attunements were the first time around, they just didn't hold up well long term. Wrath of the Lich King, we finally head to the frozen north to take on the infamous Arthas Menethil and the army. of the Scourge. What a hype
What is he gonna be for this one, though? I don't know, let's see.
moment that was. You know, before having replayed Wrath
Vehicle
Classic,
combat?
I might have even picked the looking for dungeon system here. But now having replayed the game with
This
it,
isn't horrible.
honestly, I don't particularly mind being
Yeah.
matched with people for a dungeon. I'd still be fine with traveling there by myself. I don't think
LFG, I don't think LFG is as bad as people say, man. Like, I feel like if you're just like if you just want to play the game, you just want to like try to do some stuff and queue up for dungeons, it's fine, man.
that's a big
Wrath is
deal,
fine.
but I think it's just worth it in terms of making the content more accessible. A lot of people would
Louis,
also
thank you
look
for the
to
raid.
Trial of the Grand Crusade as a rather lackluster raid, and again,
I actually didn't hate this raid. It was kind of easy, it was just clap through it, and it was kind of like a chill raid, okay? Ulduar, though. It's a cool raid thematically. But if I have to listen to Thorim talk about the mountains one more time, I might lose my mind. Thank you for the raid, though. Welcome in, Fuss. What's up, Momentum? What's up, Abe?
and after having replayed it, the raid was fine. Personally, I didn't like the RP between each boss, and I would have preferred some trash to kill rather than hearing about Wilfred Fizzlebang summoning Jaraxxus for the 1000th time. But the bosses were fairly interesting, it was short and sweet, it was rewarding on loot, and it was the first raid ever to have heroic mode as an optional toggle. So you know what, Trial of the Crusader, not that bad. I think if I'm picking for Wrath, it's gonna have to be something which is a bit of a cop-out and that I could have really picked for TBC Wrath or Cataclysm. But for me, I think this is the right thing to pick. And that'd be just the lack of content outside of raiding or PvP. Yes, Wrath.
I can agree with this. Yeah. I think Wrath was like the first like very, very raid locky thing for me. Where it's like, okay, I did all my stuff and now it's like, okay, I just log into raid.
Did introduce achievements, there was a bunch of reputations and so on and so forth. They crammed in loads of daily quests as updates came in through the game, but there just wasn't that extra stuff to do with your character. Once the raid was done, if you wanted to do more, it was make another character and just go do the raid again. And it's not as though I'd want a system where we need to complete some task or we fall behind in character power. We know they did that in the future. But just something else I can throw my character at and, well, just a reason to play the game a bit more.
I guess
felt that
Pipsaline,
was missing from Wrath. Onto Cataclysm and the Shattering,
Cataclysm. What are you gonna say about Cataclysm? I don't know. I don't think that changing the whole world was a bad thing. I feel like it was pretty innovative for what it did. What system in Cataclysm, though? LFR? LFR is not in Cataclysm. The entire expansion. I don't think Cata is that bad, but Cata for me is just very raid loggy. It's the same as Wrath, really. I just kind of log in to do my raids, and that's pretty much it. Oh, there is LFR in the end. Oh, really? Interesting. I didn't know that. Okay, I wasn't aware.
Controversial expansion, and that's still true by today's standards. And my pick for the worst feature of this expansion is the easiest one on this list so far.
Raid
Say
Finder.
it with me, everyone. LFR. The goal of this was very noble. They wanted to get more people into raiding because raiding in World of Warcraft has consistently been a strong point and something that people around the world still enjoy to this day. But the execution on it was just really not good.
I feel like LF4 is just not raiding though, man. This is like ultimate just brain rot. You just go in and then you just bang your head against the wall until it dies, and there's not really any mechanics. It's oh my god.
Cole even went on record during an AMA when he was at Riot saying that LFR was one of his biggest regrets at his time at Blizzard. The problem is that it created a revolving door of people joining and leaving a raid, hoping that you can bash your head into a boss hard enough for it to finally fall over and cough up some loot. And originally in Dragon Soul, which is when LFR was first introduced, it was very much worth doing, even for the top guilds in the world, because of how powerful the tier set bonuses were. In fact, both Paragon and Method at the time got a ban for exploiting an LFR, and it was also kind of difficult in its first iteration. Obviously, if you're in an organized raiding guild, you just walk over it and say, what is this joke? But for an unorganized pug group, this could be a real challenge. And you know what else LFR didn't have in Cataclysm? Determination stacks.
Your persistence in the raid of the earth. Wait, really? This is the thing? I didn't even know this existed. To be fair though, I didn't play in Mob. Am I Danish? Yes.
The only thing that, well, determined whether you're gonna kill the boss was whether the people in your group understood it and were willing to put in the effort. And that's why LFR has to be my pick for Cataclysm.
Fair pick.
Onto a rather unexpected expansion now, where we head over to Pandaria to do battle with feelings.
This is where it gets weird, because I quit in early Cataclysm, and I didn't really come back before Warlords. The only thing I know about Mr. Pandaria is that Soda Poppin did like challenge runs and he got boosted for weapons. That's all I really remember about that, because I didn't play this whole expansion. I literally didn't play it.
Amongst other things.
You know?
Pandaria is weird. Back in the day, people criticized it so much, and yet we look back now and think, damn, this was a pretty good expansion, actually. So for me to pick its worst feature is a bit of a tricky one, to be honest.
Okay.
I could, for example, say there was a lot of daily content. I think people forget that about Mr. Pandaria. There truly was quite the list of stuff that needed to be checked off. Maybe Thunder Forging from the Throne of Thunder.
Wait, Thunder Forging? Is this like you could just roll a higher level item, or what? Is there just a chance that you roll like a really high item, so it's just better? Oh yeah, okay. RNG for bigger level, okay.
I think that in many ways paved a lot of forging effects that we'd see in the future, where luck could increase the...
Thunder Forging turned into War Forging in SOO, which turned into Titan Forging in Legion. Oh yeah.
Power of your gear dramatically, but it was still pretty tame in Mr. Pandaria, so I'll give that a pass. You know, if I have to pick one feature of Mr. Pandaria, it's probably one of the biggest additions that it's made to the game, and one that's still as visible today as it was when it's released. So for Mr. Pandaria, I'm picking Pandaren. Yep, the new race that was added in Mr. Pandaria is my choice, and I just think they don't really feel as though they fit in. They look fun.
That is fucking funny. His worst feature of Mob is the Pandora.
In Pandaria when they're out on Half-Hill farming away, or laughing and eating together, but when you take them into the wider Warcraft universe, they just feel kind of goofy. In fact, there is one defining thing which has definitely pushed me towards picking Pandaren here. So at the start of Mr. Pandaria, I made a Pandaren monk. I imagine many of us did. I wanted to see the new zone, get a feel for them, and then take that new class into the expansion. And I never played a monk properly at endgame or got into PvP or raiding with them, but I'd always level it up all the same just to see how they played in each expansion. And I believe it was in Legion when I did a paid race change off of Pandaren just so I didn't have to look at it anymore. Again, I didn't race change for any endgame reasons or racials, but I just didn't like the character. So that's why for Pandaria, I'm picking the Pandaren.
Oh my god, that is so funny.
Following Mr.
Dude, Willie hates Pandaren. Wow.
Pandaria, of course, we move onwards, or I guess back in time, technically, to Warlords of Draenor.
I played Warlords of Draenor a little bit, but not enough to really have a big understanding of it, because in this period, chat, this is where I started playing private servers, okay? And this was my rabbit hole into vanilla WoW again. This right here for me was when I started my vanilla WoW rabbit hole. Because I came in, I played Warlords of Draenor with some of my friends. They were like, oh, we're all gonna come back, we're all gonna play. Every one of my friends quit. I was left alone, I had no one to play with. And then I discovered Nostalrius. And that's when it just started for me, dude. That's when the whole thing just went into vanilla WoW.
This is an expansion where
so I don't know
too
much
for choice, and unfortunately, not in a good way. You know,
Warlords of Draenor leveling was really good though. I remember really enjoying leveling in that expansion. And I also remember being really excited about garrisons, because I couldn't wait to see where I should put my garrison in the world, because it's my own building and I decide everything, and then it's just in Frostfire Ridge.
The content that did exist in Warlords of Draenor was largely okay. Now, I'm kind of split on what I do want to pick, as...
Sorry, I know I'm yapping a lot right now. I just really like the theme of VOD. The orcs, the war, like all that stuff was really, for me, it was really Warcraft. And that's why I really got into it in the beginning. I was like, it was really like Warcraft, and I liked that a lot.
Admittedly, what I want to say isn't necessarily a feature. I guess the easy choice is going to be garrisons. They completely messed up the expansion launch. Some people couldn't play for days on end. And then as it turned out, everything that we ever possibly needed ended up being available in our own instanced little world. Complete with mission tables to go and have NPCs farm gold for us. Interesting idea, and perhaps the closest we're going to get to player housing in World of Warcraft for a long time, but it just panned out terribly. But ultimately, what I'm more disappointed with in Warlords of Draenor has to have been regarding all of the cut content. There is so much stuff that just didn't happen in this expansion. I
remember going into Teledor and seeing Shadrath and being like, man, what are they gonna do with this thing? Nothing. They're gonna do nothing with it.
Farallon zone to match where Burning Crusade's Neverstorm was. There was early concepts of a Zangarmarsh zone, and then they just flooded it and called it a day. Faction capitals were supposed to be in Frostfire Ridge for the Horde and the Temple of Caribou, aka the Black Temple for the Alliance. But these were cancelled, and instead we had what felt like a temporary camp either side of Ashran.
I think there was some YouTuber, was it Hero Madurex, I think he's called? That made like a video of like all the cut content in VOD, or like in VOD, and there's like so much cut content, like so much. Who the fuck would want to go into another Sangsamarsh zone? I'm glad they cut that shit out. I like Sangsamarsh.
Raiding content itself got released within the span of a year or so, and the final patch just went on and on. Perhaps worst of all, where's the dance studio, Blizzard? So I know it's not technically a feature of the expansion, but just the amount of stuff that we didn't end up getting has to be my choice for Warlords of Draenor.
That's a good one.
But then we get to Legion and everything's lovely again.
Hey man, I was playing Astarius, I was playing Chronos, bro. Okay, I was deep inside of vanilla servers. I didn't play this either.
Wonderful. There's so much to like about this expansion, but admittedly early on into it, it did very much have its problems, and my choice has to be with Legendary RNG.
Oh, I heard this. So in the beginning, Legendaries were super RNG, right? But at the end, they made it so you could purchase them from like a currency or something, and then that's when it became really good.
Legendaries are a huge feature in Legion, and they can alter your character's power by a pretty enormous degree. Not only that, but there were so many different legendaries you could get, and your character's chance of getting the first one or two was greatly
improved. They diminished.
After that, you better hope and pray to see future legendaries.
Yeah, so you got the shit legendary as your first drop, and then you would like just had super bad RNG on the next ones because it removed the drop rate.
It was really important that you got a good first legendary.
If you think Legion was perfect, you were a lucky piece of shit who got your biz legendaries early on and deserved to get banned from WoW. Seems like someone didn't get the legendary. Bozo.
People doing Race to World First would level multiple characters just to see what legendary they got. If you hit a bad one, that's too bad, reroll time. In time, Blizzard will make it a bit more lenient on legendary RNG, and then right towards the end of the expansion they introduced a currency where you could create legendaries. But
oh yeah, and this one they make mythics, right? So the original design for mythic dungeons was in Mob with the challenge dungeons, and they turned that into mythic dungeons in Legion, correct?
Game Legion was definitely not without its problems, and I think early game legendary acquisition was the worst part of the expansion. And then we get to Battle for Azeroth. Much like Warlords of Draenor,
I don't even think we have to mention which one this one is, okay? Champion! You know what we have to do, champion! This one is gonna be Azeroth. Shadowlands probably will be Torghast, but honestly, I will say Torghast wasn't as bad as people make it up to be. It was just really shit that it was like a necessary thing you had to farm. Alright.
I'm spoiled for choice, and not in a good way. There's definitely a few contenders here between Warfronts, what I took to be a PvP-related piece of content, which was kind of an auto-complete PvE event, bizarrely, needing to do islands, which was running around the circle, and at least on the harder difficulties, trying...
I was actually really hyped for islands, and this was such a big disappointment too.
To avoid everything from one-shotting you,
about those.
But I think overall it has to have been Blizzard's bombardment of daily, weekly, and even monthly tasks that your character needed to do to stay up to power, both with their Azerite armor and the Heart of Azeroth. Lessons would be taken from this expansion in the future, and they were hard-learned ones at that. It was an expansion with its good points too, but as for its worst one,
he said that as he was showing Teldrassil burning.
It has to have been the character upkeep. And then we get the 1-2 punch after
I don't know if that was
BFA
on
in these
purpose.
Shadowlands, and oh dear, unfortunately things aren't getting better just yet.
Okay.
Again, it's an expansion with several contenders. How about the Maw early on, where you just had to run around on foot for ages? Perhaps Torghast, which was advertised as a roguelike feature within World of Warcraft that ended up being very tame and having a lot of overly simple bonuses. Maybe Covenants, where going into the expansion we were assured that if things weren't working out and people weren't able to make a meaningful choice, that the ripcord could be pulled and Blizzard will be able to sort it out, which just turned out not to be true.
Hey man, I played Condemn Warrior and it was so fucking fun. I just pressed execute when a mob hit below 80% health, because that's when you could execute spam, and it was the best rotation you could do. You literally just spammed execute and it was so fun.
All of these will be a great pick, but I'm going to have to go for something else, and the thing I'm going to pick from Shadowlands is going to be the story. I'm not even a big lore guy within World of Warcraft. On my first playthrough through a new expansion, I'll take my time, I'll watch the cutscenes, I'll get involved with the story. I'm not looking to rush towards endgame, complete content like it's a checklist, and log out as soon as possible. I've been there, I've done that. I'm not doing that these days. But the story was just bizarre. I don't think there's another better way to put it. This jailer character who had just popped up in this expansion had been secretly influencing everything in the background right from the start of Warcraft, and then he refuses to elaborate on this and then dies at the end of the expansion and says, yeah, well, wait and see, there's something worse than this coming. We had the all-powerful Sylvanas, who had been built up since BFA, and I think people are a little bit tired of her, and it was just a bizarre retcon of so many years of lore and story within the game. And I think moving past Shadowlands, we just kind of need to sweep that one under the rug. We can double retcon it. Shadowlands was definitely a low point for a lot of people, but the story has to have been my pick here. And then we move on to Dragonflight, our expansion that we've just come to the end of, and one that was very well received after a rather rough few years at Blizzard headquarters. And out of everything in Dragonflight, my pick here is actually really easy. And for me, the worst feature of this expansion was, hey, it's like I'm in Mr. Pandaria again, because I'm gonna pick the new race,
Sorry.
Yeah, I think they're really underwhelming model-wise. When people saw a dragon race, they thought back to the Hulking Draconids that you get in Blackwing there in earlier versions of the game.
Dude, if we would have gotten those, man, that would have been so sick, man. Like the big, like, oh my god, they would have looked so cool.
I mean, if there was an option to have a skinnier one and then a bulkier one, it would have been fine, but there is no option. You're just some salamander-looking boy. On top of that, it's like Blizzard just...
I just made mine look like Spyro, because it was such a meme, dude.
Forgot about how many years they've gone through trying to make Druid's forms look cool and customizable, because when you enter combat to Drakthir, you're forced into your dragon form where you can't even see your armor. Imagine being the guy who has to make tier sets for Drakthir, knowing that they're never going to see them in the first place. For an expansion where so many things were done right, it just seems like they missed the mark thematically on this new race. As far as I know, in the War Within, you can stay in combat in your Visage form, and maybe even one day they'll open up other races to becoming Evokers. If they do, that's an easy paid race change for me, by the way, Blizzard, I'm just telling you. But for Dragonflight, it has to be Drakthir. And finally, the War Within. Yeah, we're super early on into the expansion. I know we haven't seen the full content by any means, but I guess that's where we are at the moment. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to throw something here in the video, just as some early thoughts on the expansion. And my pick for the War Within so far has to be underground zones. So there's two that I'm thinking of in particular. Okay, yes, there are 3 underground zones technically in the War Within, but Hallowfall just doesn't feel like you're underground, because the skybox is absolutely enormous, and you've got the big lava lamp looking thing in the sky anyway to keep the lights on and make things feel a bit more bright and vibrant. But Ashkahet and the Ringing Deeps, yeah, not so keen on them. The thing is,
I like it though, because it's really the vibe. We are going underground into Azeroth. Like I think the zones are great. I think there's the great the Isle of Dorn. That one is amazing with all the scenery. Then you go underground, and then there's like different themes for all the zones. It's the War Within. I think they're good.
of underground zones is nowadays we have dragon riding, or sky riding I suppose, and this form of flight is just so fast and agile that when you're underground there's all these pillars everywhere in the way, you can't necessarily go over things, and it just feels a bit cramped for how quickly we can move around the map now. If you look at how Blizzard designed Dragonflight with its huge wide open zones with all these wonderful skyboxes and vistas, you can really tell how they played into that. And yes,
I like the War Within zones more than I like the Dragonflight zones, though. I think the War Within zones are like they're more cool. They're thematically better.
I like cabins in Dragonflight, of course, and I pretty much have the same comment for that. It just felt a bit cramped when we're so agile nowadays. But for the War Within, my pick is going to be underground zones.
Fair point.
And hopefully that is the worst thing I have to say about it. Though we'll see if any more get added in the future. You never know. But that's it. What I feel though, this was fun to watch. The worst feature of every single version of World of Warcraft so far. Let me know what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Was there anything completely different that you would have picked? Drop it down in the comments down below.
For the most part, I can agree.
I'm already planning on doing the opposite version of this video where I go over my favourite thing in each expansion. So look out for that one pretty soon. Okay. But, as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one.
Very soon.
Very soon.
Cool! I enjoyed it. What do people say in the comments? They feel kinda goofy. Sir, you play a gnome. The jailer is probably the worst thing about half these expansions considering the retcon going on. Well, let's see really do the best feature of every WoW expansion. The worst feature from each expansion is the players. Oh, how they butchered Sylvanas. Your favorite character in Shadowlands is criminal. Garrisons were such a wasted opportunity. Very true. This was a fun watch, though. This was a real fun watch, guys. I'll link the video right here, y'all. So if you want to check it out. There it is, guys. Check out Billy's channel, man. He makes some good videos. He makes some nice MMO World of Warcraft videos, I would say. The worst part about every expansion is that they aren't vanilla. Now, you love vanilla WoW, don't you, Mufford? God damn, man. Vanilla WoW is good, though. Vanilla WoW is a freaking good game, dude. I will be honest with that. I will say that as well.